story over the last 24 hours has been that many advertisers have now dropped Laura Ingram's show on Fox News. And the reason they dropped Laura Ingram's show is because she tweeted something out yesterday, which we discussed, in which she suggested, I'm going to quote her directly, she said, David Hogg rejected by 4 colleges to which he applied and whines about it. And we played the clip of David Hogg, who's the Parkland shooting survivor, who's obviously made a name for himself saying pretty vicious things on television about Second Amendment advocates, Dana Lash, GOPers. He's been pretty brutal to everyone who disagrees with him. And he's wanted to have it both ways, David Hogg. And again, this is not a criticism of his right to speak. Obviously, he has the right to speak, and he should speak however much he wants. And this isn't a criticism of his status as a survivor. Obviously, something awful that never should happen to anybody of decency happened to David Hogg, and that's awful and unforgivable. But he's now in the political debate, and that means that there's some slings and arrows that come with the political debate. I know this, okay? When I was 17 years old, the same age as David Hogg, I started writing a syndicated column, and I got clubbed about the ears for it. And a lot of that was deserved, because guess what? At 17, you don't know everything, and sometimes your perspectives are wrong. And if you join in the political debate, then it is open season on your politics. And by the way, it's not to be gauche. Like, insults are bad. People saying silly, stupid things about you, that's nasty. But it does happen on a relatively regular basis. Okay, for years, I was called the Virgin Ben in the left-wing press. Okay, that is not a joke. From the time I was 17, there were people who were calling me the Virgin Ben because obviously I was a nerd who had never had sex. And I was proud about the fact that I hadn't had sex, and I was a virgin until I was married. But I was called the Virgin Ben. Not once did I ever call for the people who were calling me the Virgin Ben to lose their advertising base. And my retaliatory response was always, okay, let's talk about ideas, or you're an idiot. Okay, that's the way that politics works. David Hogg, however, called immediately for an advertiser boycott on Laura Ingraham, and all these advertisers complied. And a lot of advertisers comply with this stuff because they're afraid that they don't really want the controversy. They're concerned that any controversy associated with their product is going to hurt their sales. The reality is these boycotts don't really work very well. When they tried an actual boycott against Chick-fil-A, for example, it failed immediately. I remember just a few months ago, when Keurig Coffee was bullied into dropping Sean Hannity as an advertiser. Sean fought back, and Keurig reinstated their advertisement within like a week. So all this talk about advertisers really feeling the impact of politics, it's just not true. People don't not buy products because they don't like the programs that advertisers advertise on, right? Secondary boycotts generally do not work. That's worth noting. But one of the questions I want to ask here is, what is this boycott against Laura really about? She's come out and apologized now. So if you said that it was about civility, if you said it was about decency, she shouldn't have said what she said. I don't think she should have said what she said either. Right? I said that yesterday on the show. But if you think this boycott is about civility or decency, you got another thing coming, because now she's apologized. Okay, status quo ante restored, right? We're all supposed to be cordial with the Parkland survivors, which we should be. We should be decent with the Parkland survivors, which we should be. I've been very focused on doing that throughout this entire horrible mess that's happened in the aftermath of an even more horrible incident, obviously. But decency was restored, right? Well, not right, because after Laura Ingraham apologized, David Hogg said, I want to continue to boycott Laura Ingraham. Right? He said, I want to continue to boycott Laura Ingraham. So here is Hogg rejecting Laura Ingram's apology.
That they cannot push us around, especially when all we're trying to do here is save lives. And when people try to distract, like Laura's trying to do right now, from what the real issue here is, which is gun violence in America, it's not only sad, it's just wrong. From a journalistic standpoint, I would say that she needs to be more objective and needs to stand down, because I am not the issue here. The issue needs to be gun violence in America, but what she's trying to do is to distract from that, and I hate it.
Okay, first of all, I seriously doubt that David Hogg hates the attention. I think that, when it comes to him pushing a boycott that's successfully working, I think, against Laura Ingram's advertisers, I really doubt that David Hogg laments that. And as far as who's taking us off focus on the gun control stuff, none of this has to do with gun control. Laura shouldn't have said what she said. Hogg shouldn't have made an issue out of it. It's really like none of this really has to do with gun control or saving lives. Pretty clearly, I don't know what he means when he says that Laura should be more objective. She's obviously conservative, and she says so. Even Alison Camerata jumps in at that point and says, well, she's not an objective host. That's not him just rejecting her apology. It's clip 3 where Hogg rejected Ingram's apology. He said, I 100% agree. An apology is an effort just to save your advertisers is not enough. I will only accept your apology only if you denounce the way your network has treated my friends and I in this fight. It's time to love thy neighbor, not mudsling at children. Okay, so this tweet is really telling. Okay, what Hogg is doing here is wildly inappropriate. First of all, he doesn't have to accept her apology. You never have to accept an apology. But if we're going to pretend that this is some sort of principled non-acceptance of an apology, it is clearly not. Right? When he says that, he's thanking all of the advertisers that are dropping Laura Ingraham because he likes the fact that he is wielding this sort of power against Ingram for engaging in what is, by any sort of political standard, rather mild stuff. Right? He's tweeting at her, hashtag shut up and be objective. And be objective. Go back to the original tweet for just a second, the first one. Right? So when he says here, it's time to love thy neighbor, not mudsling at children, two things that David Hogg is saying here. Again, none of this is an attack on Hogg as a person, right? Hogg might be a fine, upstanding person, although I think that his behavior here is really questionable, and I think that his behavior for the last couple of weeks in labeling all of his enemies evil has been really quite vile. But maybe he's a good person. Okay, he seems like a smart kid. Okay, but this last line is time to love thy neighbor, not mudsling at children. Once you step out in the public debate and you start speaking publicly on issues of consequence, you no longer get to hide behind the title child. Like Kyle Kashuv, who is a classmate of Hogg's in a younger class than David Hogg, right? I don't think that Kyle's not a senior. I think he's a sophomore, right? Kyle, or a junior. Kyle came out, he said, you don't get to pretend you're a child and then at the same time say that you're an adult who ought to be ruling the world with regard to these policies. And when it comes to David Hogg saying you ought to love thy neighbor and that he's standing up for civility, again, I'm not defending Laura's comment. I'm not saying she shouldn't have apologized. I am saying that David Hogg pretending to be an advocate of civility is pretty astonishing. And launching a boycott on behalf of civility as David Hogg is pretty astonishing, because here are all the things that David Hogg has said just in the last 2 weeks about his political opponents. This is clip 10.
Pathetic that want to keep killing our children. They could have blood from children spattered all over their faces and they wouldn't take action, because they'll still see those dollar signs. I'm going to start off by putting this price tag right here as a reminder for you guys to know how much Marco Rubio took for every student's life in Florida. $1.05. Okay.
I mean, do you think that's unnecessarily provocative?
No, I think it's not enough I don't think it's even provocative enough. When your old parents like, I don't know how to send an iMessage, and you're just like, give me the phone. Sadly, that's what we have to do with our government, because our parents don't know how to use a democracy, so we have to. What Dana's trying to do, I believe she's the CEO of the NRA, she's trying to distract people. If you listen to her talk,
she's a national spokeswoman for the NRA.
Exactly. She owns these congressmen. She can get them to do things. It's just she doesn't care about these children's lives. It just makes me think, what sick are out there that want to continue to sell more guns, murder more children, and honestly just get reelected? What type of person are you when you want to see more money than children's lives? What type of person does that? If you can't get elected without taking money from child murderers, why are you running? With Rick Scott, it's like, when I get elected to Senate, we're not going to let that happen. And that's the great thing about it, because those aren't going to get reelected. When you start hearing from your political aides that there's a load of angry future voters, you start to worry a little bit.
Love thy neighbor. Okay, I'm sorry. You don't get to play the love thy neighbor card when this has been your shtick for the last couple of weeks. Okay, you really don't. It just doesn't wash. So what's the boycott really about? The boycott, of course, is about politics. It's about political opponents of Laura's who see an opening and now they're going to club her, right? Because this is how Media Matters operates. This is how the left operates with their boycott tactics, that if somebody makes a boo-boo, then no apology is sufficient, and they will jump in and they will attempt to remove your advertising base. And you can see this from the way that the media continue to treat this entire issue. So over on MSNBC, right, the MSNBC panel says that Laura Ingraham is she's losing advertisers over her casual cruelty, right? MSNBC is jumping on this because MSNBC is a Fox News competitor. This is all political. To pretend this is not political is to ignore reality, obviously.
And you don't want to be in business with Laura Ingraham because of her easy and casual cruelty that she inflicts out on people on a daily basis. And again, to John Heilman's point, what you see is another example of an adult acting terribly.
And what you're seeing here is what the media have done, and they've been doing this since the shooting, and I object to it. What they've done is they've taken these kids who really don't necessarily know anything about gun control. They haven't evidenced tremendous knowledge about the issue, and they are using them as stand-ins for their own opinion. And then if those kids' opinions are attacked, the media jumps out in front and says, hey, how dare you attack these kids? And the media is pretty much admitting this, right? Brian Stelter on CNN says, listen, we're not treating these kids as we would treat any other guest on our program. We're not calling them when they say things that are blatantly factually erroneous, right? He was questioned about this by S.E. Cupp on CNN Headline News. This is clip 11. Here's Stelter explaining, yeah, we don't ask them real questions. We just have them come out and trot out their political point of view. And then if anybody attacks their political point of view, then we basically say those people are bad people.
When I was interviewing David Hogg only 10 days after the massacre, there were a few times I wanted to jump in and say, let's correct that fact.
That's so interesting.
Let's make sure we're more. And one of the times I did, and other times I did not. And, you know, there's always that balance.
Yes,
how many
it's a
times
very
you're going to
tricky
interrupt.
thing, because this is a victim on one hand who is entitled to his own emotional response.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as news people, when we hear something demonstrably untrue,
right,
you want to go in and
So
say, but
when he
that's
called
not right.
Dana Lash, the NRA CEO, interrupted and corrected that. But there are other times when I think all of us can agree. Any of these students, any of these parents, we want everybody to be as well informed as we can about the contours of this debate.
Okay, but you didn't stop this kid when he was out there saying that Dana Lash ran that she ran Congress, right? You didn't stop, and nobody, Alton Camerata didn't stop David Hogg when he went on the air and he called everybody who opposed him akin to a child murderer. Right? This is what CNN has done. This is what CNN's been awful on this. I said this directly to Brian Stelter last week, right? This is nothing that I haven't said publicly on CNN to CNN.